What's up, everyone? Chris, back again, here to talk about what could have been in wrestling. This time I want to take us back to 2010 and SummerSlam 2010 to be exact. Yeah, you can probably guess what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, up until that time, one of my favorite angles of all time, and honestly, definitely one of my favorite wrestlers. I want to talk about the Nexus and Wade Barrett, and what could have been had they rightfully won, as they should have, at the 14-man elimination tag match in the main event of SummerSlam, like I said, in 2010. Shout out, by the way, a little off topic to my friend Denise Salcedo. She's doing SummerSlam reviews on her channel. Definitely check those out. I think she's at SummerSlam 2006. She's going to release 2007 soon. So, in vain with that, obviously, it being July, so we're getting close to SummerSlam, and she's getting close to the 2010 review, and I think she agrees with me, hopefully, that Nexus should have won that night. Going back, though, looking at how they debuted, I remember loving their debut. Obviously, they interfered in that Raw main event when it was John Cena versus CM Punk, who was with, I think, Serena and Luke Gallows at that point with the Straight Edge Society. Wade Barrett came out, and the rest of the guys from the NXT Season 1, back when NXT was more like a game show, came out. They attacked everyone, beat up the announcers. Daniel Bryan had the infamous tie choking incident. And then they obviously went on to fire him, but they took apart the ring. They beat down Cena for quite a while. They beat up Punk, Gallows, and Serena, I think her name was. And then they really just left it really just kind of up in the air, like how is Raw going to kick off the next week. And that was an ending that I remember had a lot of people talking. A lot of people really, really liked it because it definitely felt like a more serious angle and not a lot of the corny comedy they were doing at that time. So going through the summer, honestly, week to week, Nexus and Wade Barrett were the best thing on that show. And in terms of the way the career went, there's going to be, obviously, Barrett's going to be a really big focus of mine. Him being the leader of the Nexus, the NXT Season 1 winner. But I also want to talk about a few other guys. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but just the ones, actually, to me, that stood out. So, obviously, going into the match, I think I've actually heard Wade Barrett say they were supposed to win, but then Vince changed his mind last minute and decided he wanted to give the fans a happy ending, send everyone home happy, so John Cena tapped out Barrett as the sole survivor, which a lot of people knew. Even Chris Jericho talks about it in his book, and Edge and Christian have talked about it on Paul Heyman's podcast. They knew it was the wrong decision, having Cena get DDT'd on the cement. They roll him back in. Justin Gabriel misses the 450 splash, gets pinned, and then Cena catches Barrett in the STF. And I know that Edge and Jericho have even said that Cena, when he came back after the match, he admitted that it was the wrong decision for him to go over, and he should have lost and given Barrett the pin. So going back after that, honestly, if we rewind it back, honestly, and just restructure the match, obviously the eliminations can happen as they happened. And if you go back and watch that match, when Daniel Bryan, not Bryan Danielson, as he is now in AEW, but Daniel Bryan made his return as the mystery seventh man for Team WWE, it got a huge reaction. People were really excited to see him back. And that was at the time where I feel like not a lot of stuff was getting a big reaction. That was really, obviously, the 2010s was a big part of it was, you just had, like, comatose crowds. Crowds were not getting into the action, into matches and angles like they were for the Attitude Era. But go back and watch the closing segment of the Raw leading into SummerSlam when Team WWE with their 6 guys has their final brawl with Nexus. The hard camera is shaking. The fans are into that. They went crazy for that final brawl. And then when Daniel Bryan comes back and he gets the first elimination and Nexus is actually down 7 men to 6, the crowd is really, really into it. And obviously, it has its ups and downs, the match, in terms of the crowd participation and just some lulls where you're getting heat on some guys. And, it can be just some of the boring, just basic submission hold wrestling, keeping a guy isolated in their corner where the crowd obviously kind of dies down. But in terms of the eliminations, you can keep pretty much everything the same. I know that Jericho was pinned by Heath Slater on Jericho's insistence, because dated back to a match he lost to him in Season 1 of NXT. And I feel like Heath Slater actually made a great showing for himself. Bret Hart liked working with him. Bret Hart, for his stint in the match, actually worked with him for the most part before Bret Hart got disqualified for using the chair. And it was clear, though, even through the match, who they were focused on. Obviously, Daniel Bryan got 2 eliminations. He eliminated Darren Young, and he also eliminated Heath Slater with what became the Yes Lock, back then the LaBelle Lock. And of course, Skip Sheffield, who became Ryback, was someone they were focused on. He got a couple of eliminations, and I definitely want to speak a little bit about him. I will a little bit later. But one thing I didn't like about the match was Cena and Barrett really didn't do a lot. Barrett did some, but Cena really just stood on the apron for like if you go back and watch it, the first like 2/3 of the match, he does nothing. Then he has his argument with Edge, which leads to Edge's elimination. Jericho and Edge blame Cena for their elimination, and they briefly beat him up on outside, and then it kind of leaves Cena laying for what looks like what was going to be a Nexus victory. I didn't really like that because, one, the beating was very short. It took Cena out too long for believability. And I feel like, honestly, it was... The match, like I said, it had some good moments, but it just had some moments where it dragged, and it just felt like the same guys were rotating in and out of the match. And like I said, you had Cena and Barrett, the 2 main guys. I know they were going at it at the end, doing nothing for a good portion of the match, so it just didn't really feel like... I get it for Barrett on the heel side being the captain, but if you think about it, Cena as the captain should probably want to start the match, at least. So I didn't really like how it played out. And then, of course, I hated the ending. So if we go back to that, say, at the end, Barrett gets caught in the STF and he taps out. Barrett can easily have gone out of the STF because of interference. Nexus was running down and disturbing and running out and interfering in a ton of matches. And I remember being positive they were going to win. So say you can give Cena that moment of having the STF on Barrett. Looks like Barrett's going to tap. Justin Gabriel, who had just been eliminated, could still be at ringside. Pops up on the apron like he's going to come in. The ref comes in, gets up to get Gabriel down. Cena releases the hold. Referee's back is turned. Barrett can just do a heel move. Low blow Cena. Hit him with Wasteland. The move that he did before the Bullhammer. And pin him in the middle of the ring. That would have legitimized the Nexus, and that would have legitimized Wade Barrett as the top heel in the company, not just on Raw, but in my opinion, the hottest heel in the company. And he could have then still do what he did after pinning Cena and cashing in his title match that he had gotten from winning NXT Season 1 and Night of Champions the next month. So if we go to September now, I think that some people might actually feel Barrett can win it. Because after that, the next night on Raw, I know Nexus kicked out Darren Young because he lost his match to Cena. I guess you could still do that if they felt the booking called for it, to bring it down to 6 guys. And then Skip Sheffield, I know, broke his ankle at a house show, so they were down to 5. So obviously, looking back, I mean, you can't control the broken ankle, and if they felt like Darren Young would be better branched off on his own, that's fine. But you can still keep it a 5-man group and still have it where, Barrett is still looked at as the top guy, and now with the victory at SummerSlam, being pushed as the top heel. Maybe even as a tie with Sheamus at that point, because Sheamus was WWE champion And I do stress a lot on this channel that the champion should be treated as the main event and as the priority. But still, he's the hottest heel who has gotten the biggest victories throughout the summer, clearly. Then they had Raw, the 900th episode of Raw. That was a 3-hour Raw, and I think it was like September 1st of 2010. And I know the Nexus won a 10-man tag of basically a watered-down version of the SummerSlam match, because I think it was, it was a little different. It was Cena, Orton, Edge, Jericho, and Sheamus versus the Nexus that remained of Barrett, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, David Otunga, and Michael Tarver. That match was not as good. Granted, it was a TV match, so it's not going to be. But I know Jericho and Edge got themselves disqualified immediately, so it was 5-on-3. So again, you would give it, even though Barrett got the pin on Orton, which was big because he did pin Randy Orton, and Gabriel actually hit the 450 on Cena and pinned him, so I did like that. You still gave the Nexus a tainted, watered-down victory. One, they had already lost at SummerSlam. And two, this was a 10-man tag on a Raw that's been forgotten about because it was on a Raw. And again, like I said, Edge and Jericho had gotten themselves disqualified, so it looked like a watered-down victory in the people's eyes, the way it was presented. So instead, I would go forward with, after Barrett wins at SummerSlam, WWE then, after, you can have, obviously, the next night on Raw, you can do what they did where it was all one-on-one matches. The Nexus should win all of those, like they did, but then you can still have Darren Young, like I said, lose to John Cena to keep Cena strong so he doesn't get pinned 2 nights in a row, because I know, obviously, at the time, Cena was the top babyface, so I am keeping Cena the winner the next night like it was, like how it was. But then when you have the 10-man tag, I do like the team they did on Raw. I mean, those were the 5 top guys outside of the Nexus, like I said. What I would do in that 10-man tag that Barrett pinned Orton, I would still have it come down to Barrett and Orton and have Barrett pin him. So I'd keep that the same, but I wouldn't have Edge and Jericho get purposely disqualified to just take themselves out of the match. I would have given that match at least 30 minutes of TV time. And you can again have Heath Slater pinning Chris Jericho. I would actually like it if, excuse me, if Wade Barrett pinned both Sheamus and Orton, because they were in that 6-man elimination match for the WWE title that September. So then he has a pin over the champion, and he pins the top contender in people's eyes, Randy Orton. And he's already pinned Cena at SummerSlam. That's how you legitimize Wade Barrett. It keeps the Nexus looking strong, and then of course, in my opinion, it keeps obviously Barrett as a top guy in the people's eyes and a guy who could realistically win the title. So now we go to Night of Champions. And that match, I know Jericho was eliminated first very quickly, and Jericho was on his way out because 2011 he wasn't in WWE. Last part of 2010 to 2011, he was not in WWE. He actually went to do Dancing with the Stars and obviously tour with Fozzy, his illustrious band. So he was focused on that. So with that in mind, honestly, you could still have Jericho go out first because you knew that he was leaving. And one thing I'll say WWE did right in this match was, one, they put the belt on Orton, who was the most over babyface. He was getting huge reactions. I remember knowing that Orton was going to win that match and win the WWE title. But I liked the eliminations. I actually liked how they had Jericho go out first quickly. He lost in the first 2 or 3 minutes. Barrett got a pin on Cena, which is what they should have done, because he, this time, now if they win at SummerSlam, he's beaten them 2 straight pay-per-views, and this is the bigger piece, and he's outlasted him in the title match. The one thing I would have changed, because I know it came down to Sheamus and Orton in the match to close out the match in this elimination, like 6-pack challenge match they had, and Orton hit the RKO and won it. That's fine. I still would have had, like I said, I still would have had Orton win it, but I would have had it come down to Barrett and Orton as the final two. WWE seems to always have the habit of an elimination title match. The champion always makes it to the final two, so it's a question if there's going to be a new champion. I liked how Paul Heyman did it at times in ECW, where he would have the champion sometimes lose first in those elimination multi-man matches, because that guarantees a new champion. I know that the year in 2006 in that crappy ECW pay-per-view that WWE put on, I know in that Elimination Chamber match, Bobby Lashley won it, but Paul Heyman wanted the Big Show, who was champion at the time, to be the first one out, so it would guarantee a new champion, so fans would get invested to see, and I think he actually wanted CM Punk to win it. Obviously, we know who won out there. So, with the final three being what it was Barrett, Sheamus, and Orton RKO'd Barrett, and then RKO'd Sheamus, and he eliminated them both. I would have Barrett actually not take the RKO. I would have Sheamus get RKO'd out of nowhere, and then get pinned. So now we know we're going to have a new WWE champion. It's either going to be Barrett, who's on a roll, has now pinned Cena in 2 straight pay-per-views, and has been the hottest heel all summer, or the hottest babyface. You had the 2 top guys on the face and the heel side, in my opinion, going for the top prize. And it's fine. Orton, like I said, should still win it. He pins Barrett and wins the title. Then we obviously go into Hell in a Cell, where obviously Sheamus can invoke his rematch clause like he did, face Orton one more time for the title at Hell in a Cell to get his rematch, while Barrett is tied up with the Nexus angle, still obviously with John Cena. And the whole thing is Cena, if he lost to Barrett at Hell in a Cell, he has to join the Nexus, but if Barrett loses, the Nexus is totally disbanded. Go back and watch that match. It's actually a pretty solid match. And what I like about it is there were not 5 finishers from each guy before we got a pinfall. You know, it wasn't a clean win because Cena had Barrett in the STF, but then debuting on the main roster, Michael McGillicuddy, who people might remember then, I think as, I know in real life he's Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, the late Mr. Perfect's son. He was going by Michael McGillicuddy at that time. And the interference when Cena got hit in the head by a pipe from Husky Harris, who became, obviously, the late Bray Wyatt. Rest in peace to him as well. Again, if you want to protect Cena with interference, that's fine. But now you really have something here. Barrett now has pinned Cena in 3 pay-per-views in a span of like 4 months. August, September, now actually in 3 months, I'm sorry. Summerslam, 3 pay-per-views in a row. SummerSlam, Night of Champions, and then Hell in the Cell. And then Cena still has to join the Nexus. From there on, in all honesty, going after that, I think obviously, now that you have more members of the Nexus because McGillicuddy and Husky Harris joined, Michael Tarver was removed because of an injury, and then they had Cena. They still had like a 6-man roster, and I actually liked the group they had at that point. Because you had the High Flyer and Gabriel, who I really liked, Barrett obviously the leader, the top guy, and you can tell he had the most potential of anybody to be somebody. So you had Barrett, and then you had, like I said, Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, who was a tag champion with Justin Gabriel, David Otunga, Husky Harris, and Michael McGillicuddy, and then Cena, the 7th member, basically by force. Which brings it back to the origination was, I know 8 men debuted, but all summer after Daniel Bryan got fired, they were thought of, everyone kept calling them, Michael Cole kept calling them the Nexus 7. The Nexus 7. So that brings you back to 7 members, which is why I like that they did that. The next pay-per-view is... I know it was the one before. Oh, yeah, it was Bragging Rights. And I really thought Barrett was going to win it there, to be honest, because they had Bragging Rights and they had the photo SmackDown vs. Raw in that Bragging Rights Cup elimination match, but they had the N insignia for the Nexus. on the cover, and I really felt he could win it. He doesn't win it. Cena, being subservient to Barrett, Barrett tells him, "You have to do what I say." And he told Cena, "You have to make sure I leave the winner," which Cena did when he got Barrett disqualified. So Barrett won by disqualification because Cena came in and FU'd him. That's a fine way to get around it, and honestly, Orton was over enough at that point that I don't think you should take the title off him that quickly. So I'm fine with Barrett not winning the title, but still winning by disqualification, even though it's, a stupid finish always, unless there's a good reason for a DQ, but at least they had a storyline reason for it. But I still think it could keep the Nexus and Wade Barrett strong, because again, he has the 3 straight victories over Cena. You've seen him pin Orton in that elimination tag match on Raw. And again, like in this situation, he's also pinned Sheamus. So even if Sheamus was to win the title back at some point, you know that he's capable of beating him. So it still establishes him as a guy and as a star who has beaten all the other top stars. So going through it, obviously, the Nexus has their feud with Orton. Cena's kind of caught in the crossfire because he wants to help Orton, but he knows he can't. And then it goes to Survivor Series where Cena's the special guest referee, and it's Orton versus Wade Barrett. I actually think that they could still go ahead, and I know that I was pretty positive at this point that Barrett was going to win the WWE title. I know Miz was the Money in the Bank holder, but look, if we look at who has bigger star qualities about him, it's Barrett between him and The Miz. The Miz might be a slightly better talker, but I just remember really believing Barrett was going to be champion at some point. He had the size. He's a legit 6'3". He's still good on the mic. And if you just watch his work in the ring with working strikes and the moves he did, like the Boss Man Slam, and how he really delivered moves, and also how he sold, he was in better shape than The Miz, and he's just seemed like a better, smoother worker than The Miz. And I just always remember feeling WWE made the wrong choice when they had The Miz win the title in November and not Barrett. Barrett was on the poster for that Survivor Series, which is also another reason I thought he was going to be champion. And in this situation, I think you actually go and you run with Barrett. What I think happens here is, in all honesty, they still have the match. Cena is the special guest referee. And I think actually at this point, I think what can happen is he can obviously be calling the match, but then the Nexus interferes. He tells them all, "Get out of here. Like, I'll stop the match right now, and I will award it to Orton. I don't care if I get fired, because I'm not going to cheat Orton out of the title with you guys attacking him while I'm the referee." What I think actually can happen is The Miz comes down and basically is standing at ringside like he's going to cash in his Money in the Bank contract on the winner. So he's going to actually try to cash it in right after the match ends. I think the Nexus should actually attack Miz, take the briefcase from him, distract Cena, like they're still trying to interfere in the match. Otunga hands the briefcase to Barrett, whacks Orton in the head with it, knocks him out, and Cena, kind of like Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 1997, makes the count, but you can see in his eyes he does not want to count the 3 to award this guy the title, but reluctantly counts the 3, and then Barrett is the new champion. What they can do to, I guess you can say, leave a cliffhanger, they can take they then can obviously celebrate, but now Orton's knocked out with the briefcase and Miz is beaten down. They can actually go back to beating down The Miz and Alex Riley, because I know he was associated with him at that point. The Miz gives him Wasteland and then drops the briefcase on him to end the show. So now you have Barrett celebrating becoming the new WWE champion. So now you have your new top heel. He has beaten all the top stars. He is ahead of the top heel faction. And, excuse me, he's embroiled now still with a feud with Cena, Orton, who wants a rematch, and The Miz. What you can do from there is obviously Cena can tell the next night on Raw, Cena can tell Barrett, look, I fulfilled all your obligations. I did everything you said. Now I'm free. Now I no longer have to listen to you and be subservient to Nexus. Barrett can tell Cena this and say, before you go, I want to give you one last parting gift. And then they give him one more Nexus beatdown. They beat him down, 6-on-1 at this point. And then the Wasteland Slam. And then the 450 by Gabriel to cap it off. Cena then obviously is laid out, and this is still putting more heat on Nexus. Because people now are seeing that they are truly dominant. They have the WWE title, and even though Cena's out of the group, they've just laid him out again. So now Orton's without the title. Miz has his Money in the Bank briefcase, but he is the cowardly heel. He doesn't even want to cash it in my opinion, because he knows if he does, the Nexus is not just Wade Barrett, but the rest of the Nexus is not far behind. And I know this takes away Miz's title win, but what did Miz do besides beating John Cena at WrestleMania 27 with The Rock's help? What else can you note for me about that win, about that title reign from November until like that April? What, his win over Jerry the King Lawler at Elimination Chamber in February? Is that what you're going to tell me? So obviously, look, I know it takes away the Miz's title win, but the Miz, if we're being honest, I'm a Miz fan, but I will say he was never looked at as a main eventer and as a legitimate star in the people's eyes. People knew he was only there as a space filler for that WrestleMania so they could start hyping up John Cena versus The Rock. And if you think I'm wrong, well, then you clearly weren't watching very carefully back then. So now back to this. So actually, here's where I think actually Miz would cash in Money in the Bank. Orton would would get his rematch for the title after losing to Barrett at TLC. And Barrett and Orton have their have like a tables match. And in my opinion, the way it should end is Orton goes for the RKO, but as he has it, Wade Barrett blocks him, gets a waist lock, pops him up almost like a German suplex, but then instead just hoists Orton up onto his shoulders, and then positions him for Wasteland through the table. That way, Barrett wins and retains the WWE title after a tables match with Orton, where obviously you can give him like 20 to 25 minutes, and they've just beaten each other down. After that, Cena can come out and extract a measure of revenge on Wade Barrett and attack him and FU him through the table. Rather than having 1,000 chairs fall on him, he can FU, I guess you can say, Barrett through a table. From there, then you can have The Miz cash in Money in the Bank. But as he goes to cash it in, the Nexus beats Miz down, and then obviously leaves him laying. And while Miz didn't succeed in his cash in, he didn't lose. He just loses his cash in rights because it's a disqualification. Because of the fact, actually, unless obviously they would confirm that it's a tables match. If they confirmed it was a tables match, just like with Orton, then what they could actually do is Barrett could do nothing. Barrett's still laid out, and if you want to protect Miz and try to make him look as a serious star, because he had the U.S. title reign, he had a World Tag Team title reign the past year, he was being protected as a mid-card champion at least, that they were trying to elevate, even though it didn't really work. What you can do is actually you could have Gabriel hit Miz with a 450 splash to the table, put Miz through a table technically, so he loses his cash in, because I just remembered, forgot it was a TLC event, so every match has a stipulation. He loses, but he doesn't lose because of Barrett. He loses because of the other 5 guys in Nexus. The Nexus then drag Barrett out of there, who's still sawing the FU through the table. And then, obviously, we can move from there on to the end of the year and into the Royal Rumble. Here's a big difference that I would have. CM Punk would not take over the Nexus. Because I know that they did that where CM Punk, for no reason really, I know he was doing commentary by the end of 2010, but he, because of an injury, I think. But he was doing commentary, and then he took over the Nexus, and Wade Barrett went to go form the core on SmackDown. In this situation, I'm keeping Barrett on Raw, and I'm keeping him the WWE Champion going into the Royal Rumble. Excuse me. In this situation, what I would do, kind of like what they did with Randy Orton and Sheamus in Royal Rumble 2010, the previous year, where it was 2 heels going at it for the WWE title. I would have The Miz then demand a rematch against Barrett, and it's Barrett and Miz for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble, instead of Orton getting another title shot. And in that situation, I would have Barrett beat The Miz cleanly, and I would have John Cena, not Alberto Del Rio. I would have John Cena win the Royal Rumble like he did the 2 years previous. 3 years previous, because we're in 2011 now, like he did in 2008. And then he makes his intentions known that he's going to challenge Barrett for the WWE title. We get through Elimination Chamber, and I know that, like I said, at the Elimination Chamber, The Miz worked with Jerry the King Lawler in a title match. You could still do Lawler, and you can actually play off this. When the Nexus made their debut and attacked everybody, one of the guys they attacked was Jerry Lawler, along with Matt Striker and all those other guys, besides Michael Cole, because I know he got out of there. Lawler can say that you came at me the first night you debuted here, took a cheap shot at me with the rest of your squad. While you took me out, While you took me out temporarily, you can't keep me down, and I'm laying claim as the challenger to your WWE title. What they can have him do is, to lead up to it, he can run through the Nexus guys. He can beat Gabriel one week, beat David Otunga the next week, and then leading up to it, maybe win a handicap match against McGillicuddy and Husky Harris. So he's ran through almost the entire Nexus team, and then it's like the last one left now. The only one left, Barrett, is you, and I'm taking your title. Obviously, I would have Barrett win, and I would have Barrett beat the King cleanly. I don't think any outside interference is called for here. So then, Barrett is still the WWE Champion going into WrestleMania, where now the challenger is John Cena. You can still have The Rock come back, and they do their feud. Rock comes back and mocks John Cena's "You can't see me" thing and does that promo on him. And they can have their side feud, but you can still have the build-up, because now you have more of the backstory, where Cena guarantees victory. Cena says, you cheated at SummerSlam with a distraction to pin me. You robbed me of the title chance at Night of Champions, and you cheated again at Elimination Chamber, at Hell in the Cell to pin me, and you made me subservient to you for months, and I had to join the Nexus. Well, the only thing I can do to get revenge is take the WWE title from you. And then, obviously, you can have the build-up still with The Rock and everything, like I said, so it's a 3-man build-up. But this time you have more star power, because at least Cena and Barrett have a much better backstory than The Miz and Cena, who, in all honesty, I'll just say I never really thought they worked well together. Just their in-ring styles just didn't really seem to mesh. I thought Barrett and Cena had a much better match than The Miz at that Hell in the Cell in 2010 than The Miz and Cena did at WrestleMania 27. So now we are here at WrestleMania 27. It arrives. We still have our match. We can actually have the Nexus still interfere because the Nexus is still under Wade Barrett at this point. And again, Punk could still have done his feud with Randy Orton, which would have been fine. And I liked that feud. But like I said, you can still, but still, now you have Barrett still as a WWE champion facing Cena. The Nexus interferes in the match when it looks like Cena's making his comeback and hits the FU on Barrett. What can happen is The Rock, as the special host, wanting to keep the match relatively clean and without much interference, I think him and Cena, like they did with the Core the night after WrestleMania 27, they take out the Nexus together. They take out all 5 of the guys running down. You know, Otunga, Gabriel, Harris, McGillicuddy, and Heath Slater. And then what happens is Barrett is still getting up, trying to collect himself after the FU. Cena looks like he wants to hit one more FU to win it, but instead The Rock turns him around into a rock bottom, just like he did in the match against The Miz. And then he counts the 3 for Barrett, and Barrett pins John Cena one more time at WrestleMania 27. So now you have a true star, a true top heel, because he was, like I said, the hottest heel going that entire summer of 2010. We've capitalized on that momentum, and we've ran with a new guy, who is your top guy now, going obviously through the summer into the fall, now going into the spring. The next month, I believe it was Extreme Rules. And then at Extreme Rules, I know they did the 3-way cage match with John Morrison, Miz, and Cena. You can still put John Morrison in that match, but there's one other guy I want to talk about. And I left this guy out on purpose when I said the King could go through most of the Nexus. I said he can go through Otunga, Gabriel, McGillicuddy, Husky Harris, but he didn't beat Heath Slater. And I actually think that that could be important. Because Heath Slater can then, I think he was actually, believe it or not, obviously Daniel Bryan being on the NXT Season 1 is their biggest star, and then it's probably Barrett. I think Heath Slater is the 3rd biggest star from Season 1 NXT. I wanted to talk briefly about him because Bret Hart, if you go back and watch that 2010 SummerSlam match, Bret Hart was working with him exclusively for most of the match. From the beginning brawl to Bret Hart's comeback sequence, he did it all his moves to Heath for like the couple minutes he was in there. He was only in there for like 2 minutes or so, but still. And then Heath Slater really came into his own doing the one-man band things, doing those skits leading up to Raw 1000, getting beat up by the Legends. I know it was a comedy act, but I found that stuff entertaining. I do remember finding myself laughing at the things where Heath Slater was singing as the one-man band and had his first single. And then, of course, worked with Jinder and Drew McIntyre and did the 3-man band. And then even, honestly, having that segment with Brock in 2016, when Brock told him, Heath, I don't give a shit about your kids, that made me laugh. And then winning the tag belts with Rhino. So I think he's the 3rd biggest star. And what they can do is actually have a 4-man elimination, have a 4-way match where Heath Slater can actually be in it and win the #1 contender shot to be in that match. I would like to put him in that match because Barrett will be using that as insurance. He'll use that as insurance to tell him, hey, you're going to take the fall for me. If it's just you and me in the ring, you're going to lay down because I'm leader of the Nexus, and you'll make sure I retain my WWE Championship. Obviously, we can see where this is going. Tension erupts. And actually, in that match, I actually think Heath can start hinting at a face turn when he tries to pin Barrett in the match. So now some cracks are forming in Nexus because they can't stay around forever. And they do have to break off into their own individual roles. And, obviously, at that point, I do think Cena, by pinning, because actually, I don't think it was an elimination. It was a triple threat, so you can still have a fatal 4-way match, non-elimination, just first pin wins you the title. He can then pin Heath Slater, John Cena that is, win back the WWE Championship. And then, obviously, there's the dissension in Nexus between Slater. Wade Barrett blames him for costing him the title. And then in a follow-up rematch, in the sequential rematch that Barrett can get against Cena, much like with the Alex Riley breakup between The Miz and Alex Riley, Wade Barrett can lose to John Cena again, so Cena can get a clean win back on him. And that could be because Heath Slater screws up. He's trying to hit Cena with a chair, accidentally hits Barrett. He gets taken out, and then Barrett gets FU'd onto a chair and gets pinned. Barrett can then shift his focus on blaming the Nexus for not being there, for screwing their plan up, focus on Heath Slater in particular, and that will start the breakup of the group. So obviously then they can all branch off to their singles careers like they did, and you can again then keep Barrett on Raw, which I think he was a stronger suited there than on SmackDown, or you can move him in the next draft. I just wanted to stop it there. I just wanted to get to the point where Cena got the WWE title back. And then, of course, because I know it goes then, especially if you kept Barrett on Raw at that point, being an established star, being the WWE champion for a while, it might take some focus away from CM Punk because they were about to branch into the summer of Punk. So I'm going to leave it there. And I really feel those are the sequential events that could have happened had it been one simple booking change. Barrett gets the win against Cena at SummerSlam 2010 because a lot of people feel, again, that was the right decision that should have been made. It really buried the Nexus and took away a lot of the heat they had, and they weren't looked at as the same credible group after that night. And especially Barrett, who was on such a roll. I know the focus was mainly on him, but as the leader, I felt it should be. And again, like I said, I don't know if people expected this, but Heath Slater is the other guy I think that could have had a breakout role in that. Because like I said, even though obviously it was comedy, mid-card stuff, I really did find a lot of his stuff entertaining. So let me know what you think, guys. Let me know if you think it could have played out that way. Like I said, I was a huge fan of the Nexus angle until that point. I really liked Barrett's work. I liked his look. I liked his moveset, and I just thought he was a great talker and great worker overall. And I do feel like that's a guy WWE did miss the boat with. So again, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the whole situation with the Nexus and how it could have gone down differently had they won. And also let me know what you guys want me to talk about. Any particular topics from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and so on. And if there's any AEW fans, I know the company's only 5 years old, but if you have any what-if scenarios you'd like me to talk about from AEW, let me know. So don't forget to like and subscribe, people. Thank you as always, and I'll be back next weekend. Take care.